Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for coming to the Investor Talk. How are you today?
Hey, Max, thanks for having me on. I'm good, a little busy and overwhelmed, but happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. We are always busy. That's a busy life.
Busy life and busy time.
Absolutely. But we're happy in what we are doing. Before going through our topics and helping funders to understand more how venture capital works and how we do invest money, would you like to give an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Matt Ward. I run Forward VC. We're an early stage climate accelerator, bringing real world impact to the climate and the startup side of things, because you can create the world's greatest XYZ, but if you keep it in your basement, you don't change the world. And we've got big problems to solve. Prior to starting Forward, mechanical engineer, built and sold a couple companies, e-commerce, media, podcasting. Nothing big on a Silicon Valley type scale, but learn the ins and outs of growth hacking, product, sales, marketing, networking, and that's kind of what's brought me here to today. Throughout that journey, worked with a lot of startups. After a few years of doing that, I decided selling more D2C and B2B junk, it wasn't so meaningful and mission oriented. That's when I started Forward VC. That's when I connected with 1,300 funds, incubators, accelerators, CVCs, all in the climate and clean tech space to try to be the super helper and connector on the climate side, kind of like how you are, it looks like, on the startup side of things, Max. And that's a little quick overview of me.
Thank you so much. You have a lot of experience. So let me start. Uh, which are the main sectors, stage, and geography you prefer to invest?
So we focus on climate companies. A lot of investors will have some type of metrics or frameworks or impact targets they're having. We want to mitigate 1 gigaton of carbon. We want to reduce X kilos of plastic. We don't have that for us, and for a lot of reasons. I think it overcomplicates things. I've never met a startup that had realistic numbers that didn't completely make them up. All startups pivot, and it takes a ton of time and energy and cost to go through all of those LCAs. So we invest in climate companies with positive climate economics. What that means for me is there's unit economics. You sell an iPhone, cost you X to produce it, you make Y. Climate economics, well, for every unit you sell, every new customer, every new product, service, etc., are you having a proportionally positive impact on the world, the planet, the environment? If the answer is yes, you're a climate company, and we're interested. We do pre-seed and seed. So we invest in the very early stages in Europe, North America, and Israel on climate companies where you have I like to say, the crazy ass founder solving the big, hairy problem, the real world, really dirty, ugly, messy type thing that needs to be done, and it needs to be decarbonized.
For what is my experience, so complicated to understand when actually startup are very impactful when it's just a saying, because the impact there is almost nothing. So how do you make the most out of it? How do you recognize when really what they're going to do is something that is going to make a difference and not just claiming all the time? Because many of them, they just claim.
I like to look into the actual business and the product itself and try to have back of the envelope type math. Okay, these guys are doing reusable, refillable deodorants. How much packaging goes into a deodorant? If they sell X number of deodorants, what does that kind of realistically look like? And as the company grows and scales, they're going to be cleaning off more people's pits. That's going to mean that there's less plastic being produced on the packaging. Or a bank that's helping with creating green loans for borrowers. Well, they can't do that right now. Banks can't lend these super nice interest rate mortgages or loans because, well, they don't have the reporting that's necessary to show the carbon footprint of all the borrowers and their scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. These guys help simplify that with like a 1, 2, 3 kind of wizard system, so they can unlock new value. Or another company we're looking at doing something similar. They're bringing transparency to the food ecosystem. Imagine if you knew exactly the carbon footprint and cost of every single ingredient that went into every single product, and you had recommendations saying, by the way, if you switch your tomatoes from Peru to Chile, you'll decrease your costs 7.5% and decrease your carbon footprint of your lasagna sauce 11.5%. Things where, as the company grows and scales, it's idiot proof that it makes the world a better place. That's what we look for in founders that have that core climate and environment positive mission at the center of their business. They're building this because they want to be part of the solution, not just a quick marketing scheme.
How much do you normally invest?
We do 100K, we take 5%. And that's our standard accelerator terms. And generally speaking, we try to be worth like 1,000 times that in terms of the value we bring to companies. We've flipped the model of an accelerator a bit on its head. There's a lot of accelerators out there. They might take new companies twice a year, 3 times a year. They've got these cohorts. And sorry, our last batch just ended. Our next one's going to start in 5 months. So just put your startup on pause for like 5 months, and then we'll get serious about things. I don't find that good. I don't like the model of bringing in 30, 40, 100 companies in the cohort and saying, hey, we're going to be super personalized and helpful with you. But by the way, you're just a number. We bring in 1 to 2 new companies a month. We invest 100K, and we connect them with everyone under the sun when it comes to clients, pilots, partners, governments, investors, et cetera, with the goal of 2 to 3 months from now, let's have 2 to 3 really serious new customers, massive pipeline built, and then raise a real round.
You are very early to be an accelerator. You must be. What are the top concerns when it comes to giving the first check to these guys? What do you see the most? The company, the team, the product? Where you focus on?
Team. So I like the 3 T's framework. So team, TAM, timing. The TAM, it's got to be tackling something massive. I like to see at least $1 billion, but generally much more than that. And either growing very quickly, so it's a growing market, or a just enormous number. It might even be declining, but it's a stagnated old industry ripe for disruption. Timing. Why is it possible now, but wasn't possible 2 or 3 years ago? Because if it was possible 2 or 3 years ago, why has no one done it? And then the wild card, the most important thing, team. Because in venture, you have winners and you have everyone else. And that's especially true in the early stages. And what we look for when deciding on the companies to invest in is, I don't know if I can swear, but is something about this person absolutely effing extraordinary? Would you bet on them almost regardless of what they were doing? If it was this business or another business, if it was a boxing match, a race, maybe they're a refugee that's gone through incredibly hard times. Maybe it's somebody who had a really hard time growing up. Maybe they built a business as a kid that they turned into something extraordinary. Maybe they were a athlete that's gone through the ringer. Something about this person. Maybe they're the salesperson that can convince anyone, or that kind of team leader that can build the ultimate organization. Something about the individual and to the core makeup of the team or the founding team. You believe in them. Because if you can get them, if they can get you to believe in them, they can get others as well. And if they can't get you to believe in them, they'll never be able to build the team, make the sales, do everything that's needed to become something extraordinary.
Are you confident to invest 100% in an online meeting, or do you need a face-to-face sometimes?
I don't need face-to-face. I ask really hard questions. We talk to founders. We talk quite a bit. And I'm generally have known the founders a little bit before we actually make the investment. They're generally applying to pitch on the startup tank, that little background you see there, which is our Dragon's Den or Shark Tank for climate companies. We do it every 2 weeks. We have 2 to 3 top climate funds and 6 climate investors. You could find it all at startuptank.com. But I've basically been going back and forth with founders for quite a bit. A lot of times we'll connect on WhatsApp and do phone calls that way as well, or voice messages. I like to get a good feel for the person. But yeah, I agree, in person would be better. But if you're writing 100K checks, in person's not really a doable thing, because you would be throwing away so much money on the flights. And let's be totally honest. If you're a climate investor going to meet all of your companies, that's quite a climate impact right there. You got to make sure you're climate positive.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, you are being accelerating. You must be very involved. In your opinion, because there are so many accelerators who claim to be an accelerator, but actually they are not accelerating. In your opinion, what should be a must for an accelerator, and what you do for the founders to make sure that you're investing 100K and they can get out the most out of your money and your help?
So what I've seen quite frequently from people coming onto the startup tank and from just pitches in general, I'll see like a slew of accelerators that companies have gone to, like 3, 4, 5. And I'm wondering, why the hell are you going to all of these accelerators and then still applying for funding? I don't understand. Something's not clicking here. Either you're not getting the acceleration or the support or the network, or something's wrong. And it's not that the company's bad. It's not that the team's bad. I think it's just that the accelerator model is great for the accelerator and kind of indexing, but it's not all that inducive to really hands-on or really focused effort on the company. We run what I call the Partner in Crime Climate Accelerator, the Partner in Crime program. Basically, you have me and I have one or two other companies every month, and we're basically kicking ass alongside the 30 plus mentors that we have. We're getting rid of the traditional mentors and people coming in to give aspirational speeches and tell the CEOs what it was like founding a big company or building a sales team. You can find all of that information online. We're 80-20ing the accelerator model and bringing in the world's top folks alongside my network as well, and then saying, tell us your problems, tell us what you're looking for. And we're just going to have people jump in and say, look, I can introduce you to XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. That's our focus of our accelerator, is really on the business development side of things. So I come in from day one and say, where do we need help? Where do we need to focus? Okay, here's how we're going to get customers. Here's my network. Tell me who you want introductions to. Here's my templates for reaching out to companies, both on LinkedIn and an email. You go and reach out to 50 companies. I'm going to reach out to a bunch. I'm going to introduce you to a bunch, and our network and mentors are going to do the same. And let's get you some serious kick-ass traction so that we can go into a demo day deal where the investors are fighting over each other to make the investment, as opposed to going through 5 accelerators to trying to get your round raised.
I completely agree. This should be the real accelerator, no?
It's the 80-20 model. We're getting rid of the things that don't matter and really focusing on the things that do. Your pretty pitch deck, your pretty pitch presentation, all of that's bullshit. Excuse the French. The thing that really matters is getting progress and traction. And if you have that, the investors come. And if you don't have that, especially nowadays, you either get terrible terms or get nothing.
Yeah, completely right. How do you expect, I mean, if you expect your portfolio, which is pretty vast, plays some kind of interactions? Should they have some kind of interaction between them?
Yes. So I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that network and karma is kind of the way to win. So what we do, our accelerator hasn't launched yet. We're launching pretty soon. We've got companies that are kind of planned to pop into the program. And what we plan on doing, and what I've done for my companies in the past as well, is networking them as much as possible, both with my network and then with the accelerator. We have a Slack community, WhatsApp, a database on kind of an Excel spreadsheet. Here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing, what I'm looking for, the network I have, what I need help with, and then plugging them all into one another, including there's a tool we use called Bridge, which is a great way to connect to other people's connections and then see who knows who, and then request introductions. So what I encourage all of our companies and what all of our mentors to do is just be incredibly helpful and build up the karma, because the karma comes back in spades when you guys are all doing similar things. So yeah, talk to the other companies, see how you can help each other, and leverage the mentors and the network, because the network and the warm intros are everything.
Absolutely, especially when you're early. Can you give me an advice to founders why and when to pivot? Because for many, pivoting is just understandable.
When to do what? Sorry?
Pivot.
Pivoting. Oh, Lord.
Many founders, they are just scared. They just believe pivoting is just failure, which is not actually avoiding failure, not failure.
It's the reason why it's really hard to give advice is you can't really know until you're in the situation. So pivoting is what you do when there's no other good option. So if you have to really think about, okay, have I given this my all? Have I completely grinded on this? Have we pushed all the stops? Are we trying to push a rock up a hill? Is there a better way for us to get around this hill besides pushing the rock over the hill? Sometimes it is, you have to just push the rock over the hill. Like in the last year, I've connected with 1,300 funds, incubators, and accelerators. By the way, you guys can find our database. It's all indexable, searchable by stage, sector, geography, et cetera, at Forward VC, the number 4 ward.vc/VC database. But that was just brute force effort and outreach. And sometimes it takes that brute force effort, but you've got to see that you're making forward momentum and progress. Because if you're not, you're just slamming your head against the wall. And it is maybe time to pivot, or maybe time to call it quits. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that's wrong with that is if it I would say if it really feels wrong to do, if something in your gut tells you it's the wrong decision, something about the way we've evolved, our gut is pretty damn smart. So it's much smarter than the brain a lot of times. So if your gut tells you something's the right or wrong decision to do, I would seriously take that into consideration.
The emotional brain. Why did you become an investor?
Because I want to have more impact, and I could go to Africa and build houses, or I could create a business building houses in Africa, or I could create a business investing money and lending money to houses building companies in Africa, and you can have much more exponential impact the higher up that value chain you are, A. And B, I'm very good with strategy growth and helping companies grow and scale faster and discovering the strategies, but I don't want to be the person who has to do it all myself. So I like to come in as an investor where I can be half coach, mentor, strategist, and half hustler, bringing things to the table, networking and making the connections, and then helping them be the ones who execute. I became an investor because I think that's my highest leverage point for making a positive climate impact.
Can you give us 3 critical points and, let me say, skills then a founder or co-founders must have for you to invest?
Yeah, I would say there's got to be something about them that's just absolutely, excuse the French, but extraordinary. They're not the kind of person who gives up. They push hard even when people tell them they shouldn't. I think there's 2 characteristics that, and I'm a little bit on the spectrum, so I can say things that are true that are sometimes uncomfortable. But I think that two of the most powerful indicators of success, which can also be a powerful indicator of failure, but in startups, are ignorance and arrogance. Being ignorant enough to think that you could solve the problem and do something great, and arrogant enough to, when people tell you you can't, to tell them to F off. Those 2 things are incredibly important to building really true disruptive companies. And I apologize for all the French, but I think it is very important there. Another key attribute that I see with founders is that relentlessness, the grit, the survivability. A startup, building a company, it's a freaking roller coaster of ups and downs and super highs and incredible lows. And being able to deal with that is a nightmare. And the people that can are a rare breed that generally have something a little bit wrong with them. They've gone through a hard childhood. Something about them makes them extra driven to be successful, extra driven to be the best, extra driven to have the great grades, or to do XYZ, or to be the person who finishes the marathon, or to prove their parents or their friends wrong. Something about them has an undesirable or an unbelievable desire to be successful. I would say those are 3 of the biggest characteristics. And then also charisma, your ability to bring people to your mission. So either in a sales perspective of kind of, hey, I can get you to buy anything, or guys, we need to get behind this and do this, and who's with me? Like those two types of things are incredibly valuable. And then being humble enough to ask for help and admit when you're wrong, which is the exact opposite, but you've got to have some of that in there as well. Otherwise, I mean, you can only be so much of the ASS and be successful. You also have to be human.
It does. It's very complicated to have a big-headed founder and humble at the same time. It's amazing.
You've got to be special.
It does. It does. What is the perfect recipe, if there is any, for a great pitch?
If you guys go to our website, I've got a 5-step guide to kind of the fundraising process and a perfect pitch deck. You guys can steal that. It's just on mattward.io. You'll find it somewhere there. But the perfect step to a perfect pitch, you've got to answer, there's 5 critical questions. Who, what, where, when, why, and why now? Who are you selling to? What are you selling? Why do they, where are you doing it? Why do they absolutely need what you want or what you're selling? And why is now the ideal time? And get rid of the where. Who, what, why now, and how big? Because the how big is important too. This is a $100,000 opportunity, isn't going to get a lot of VCs on board. But if it's Airbnb is disrupting the housing market by helping homeowners turn their homes into vacation paradises because technology has changed, hotels are outdated, and the costs etc. They're disrupting the $200 trillion hotel market. I can't really do it here on the spot, but those 5 questions: who, what, why now, and how big. If you answer those, that's a pretty darn good elevator pitch.
I mean, in terms of IP, do you believe it's important belonging to this?
Yes, there has to be some kind of defensibility. It doesn't have to be patents, but when it comes down to a pure execution play, Casper the mattress company was worth like $1 billion, and then it was worth like $7 because it's a pure execution play and everyone does the same. You've got to have something that makes it so that your business is not instantly copyable. Otherwise, the margins go down, your business kind of dies. Doesn't have to be IP. It can be network effects, moats, some type of proprietary technology or knowledge, some special form of distribution. But what is it that makes you different and makes your business hard to copy?
Let me close with, where do you think the most of the money going to the next 3-5 years? Where founders should start a new venture?
I would ignore the whole question of where they should start and where the most money will go, because I don't think founders should focus on where the money will go. I think they should focus on where their interests align with massive problems in the world. Because as we said, founding a company is going to be an effing roller coaster. And for you to go through with that, A, you've got to be stubborn and pig-headed, but B, you've also got to have a really good reason for doing it. And what's your really good reason going to be? For me and for most of the companies we work with, it's the climate and the environment, because I like to say a lot of people like the ESG framework. And I think it should be at least E squared SG, because let's face it, the S and the G are not as important as the E. If we screw up the S or if we screw up the G, we basically have the world we have today. If we screw up the E, we're pretty much all effed. The world is going to increase pretty quickly in temperature. We're going to have mass wars, mass refugee situations, people starving, just an unfathomably bad world. And that's where I see the biggest opportunity. That's where a lot of founders as well see the biggest opportunity, not only for impact, but also for serious financial return. Because as governments start to deploy more capital into the space, they start to implement carbon credits, LPs start to divest out of fossil fuels and into things that actually make the world a better place. You have more investors like me who want to feel like their work is meaningful. All of that's going to bring probably on the order of $5 to $25 trillion into the environmental space in the next 5 to 25 years. But with those waves of capital, what we see and what I believe our thesis is, those are going to have to be deployed at the later stages, because good luck putting $10 trillion into pre-seed and seed climate companies. It just doesn't happen. Plus, the folks that write those kind of checks, they're big ticket checks, because A, they're a little too lazy to write so many checks, and B, that's where the big management fees come from. So the massive opportunity is in the early stage climate side of things, because if you're able to get a company and survive the next 3 to 5 years, don't be thinking about those 3 to 5 years. Think about what comes next, because there's going to be 25 trillion of dumb money waiting to fund the great companies that have survived that 3 to 5 year time horizon. And that's what we do with Forward VC. Our accelerator gets companies from the kind of early stage, generally around a seed, up into serious traction and becoming those leaders, so that they can get to the point of taking non-dilutive funding or dumb money funding, etc., or grants or governmental programs, all of that, to become the companies that change tomorrow. Because if you look outside, pretty much everything that you see has to be rebuilt and reinvented. Our entire infrastructure and economy needs to be redone, because otherwise we won't be able to keep the world in a habitable place for everyone. And that's why I think that early stage climate's the big opportunity.
Mark, thank you so much for coming to the Investor Talk. It's been a very great pleasure for me. Thank you.
Max, thanks so much for having me. If anyone's tuning in and interested, none of this is a solicitation, but we do have an accredited investor syndicate you can learn out more about at forward.vc. They invest alongside our accelerator program. They'll be investing into the pre-seed and seed rounds. And we have our database, 750 plus climate funds, incubators, accelerators, etc., indexable or searchable by stage, sector, geography, check size. So if you're a Colombian startup creating lab-grown coffee beans, you can find the perfect investor. We've got Slack communities there as well for climate investors and for climate startups. So it's all, again, at forward, the number forward.vc. We invest in companies that, well, move the world forward.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you. And take care.